Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. Good morning, Dee.
Merry Christmas, Carol.
Merry Christmas, Dee. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm happy. I got on a merry and bright sweatshirt. I'm ready for my kids to come over and do breakfast. What are you doing today?
Well, I have on my green sweatshirt with the little birds on it.
What kind of little birds? I can't tell.
Just little cardinals, and it's got little
Cardinals.
holly things. It's an oldie but goodie. I don't want to tell you how old it is.
Doesn't matter. It has cardinals on it, so I'm all about it. I love cardinals.
Yay.
So we have a quote this morning that is very festive in a way. Festive for you and me.
All right. You can't get a cup of tea big enough or a book long enough to suit me. C.S. Lewis.
And we love C.S. Lewis. He's one of our favorites.
We do. And we could go off on a whole tangent about C.S. Lewis and all that, but we are not going to do that. We're going to go on a little tangent.
Just a tiny tangent. We'll call it a tiny tangent. So you've seen the movie. In case people want to know more about the humanity of C.S. Lewis, because he was a very prolific Christian writer. He was Anglican. And he reminds me of all things that are good about England, you know? Books, cozy evenings in front of the fire, tea.
Right. And so the movie Shadowlands, we picked that because it is about C.S. Lewis and the love of his life. Joy Davidman.
Which he wrote the book Surprised by Joy about, partially.
Right. So Shadowlands has a great Christmas scene in it. It's a little bit on the sad side, but depending on where you're at and what you're doing, it's a good one to queue up, at least get to the Christmas scene.
Yeah, because the Christmas scene is very sweet. And I love it. And then if you want to know more about their relationship, at least in a novelized fashion, you can read the book Becoming Mrs. Lewis, which we both read. And it was a pretty good book, too. I thought it was fun to read.
I enjoyed that book. I enjoyed it very much. So, yeah, I would recommend it. And you do learn a lot more about C.S. Lewis.
And if I remember right, you learn a little bit about gardening in that book. So about his garden, because he was a big gardener and Joy liked to garden. So I think that ties us into our topic today in two ways. We are talking about tea, the actual shrub, and also we always talk about gardening.
But just an aside, Dee, we can connect.
Yeah.
We can connect any topic to gardening, any topic. And we should.
That's true.
We should challenge our listeners to send us topics, and then that don't relate to gardening, and then we'll tie them into gardening.
Ooh, that'd be a great winter project, wouldn't it? Because you could only talk so much about forcing bulbs indoors, poinsettias, and amaryllis. I mean, really, you run out of things to talk about in the winter if you're not careful. So yes, listeners, I almost said readers, listeners and readers, send us your non-gardening topics, and we'll make them about gardening, because we make everything about gardening. So tea, Camellia sinensis, which we can't grow.
No, it's only hard to zone 8. So I know they grow it down in the southern states, and you can actually buy American grown tea from Camellia sinensis.
And tea has figured a great deal in many different things, especially my cat's on top of the table where I'm trying to record, so no telling what you all are going to hear. Tea has been so important to the British public that it is even on Spode dishware. And I have a little story about that talks about my mother-in-law.
Go for it.
So I'm drinking out of my Spode Christmassy mug, which is the red and white Camellia sinensis. It's the Camilla pattern. And it's actually not spelled the way tea, the botanical name for tea is spelled, but never mind. Red and white. It also comes in a blue and white. But my mother-in-law, and she had a really pretty china cabinet that sat in her dining room. And on top of it was this gorgeous coffee set in this pattern. And when I became interested in Spode dishes, which I have quite the collection of Spode over the last 32 years, I decided at some point when I had a little extra money that I was going to buy that coffee set because, I knew that my sisters-in-law would probably get my mother-in-law's set. So I bought it. And so I have it, but then I went on and I bought plates and I bought bowls. And anyway, every time I use it, every time I drink out of one of these mugs, I think of my sweet mother-in-law who's no longer with us.
Aw, that's nice. I always think of my mom when I brew tea at night because she always had a cup of tea before she went to bed.
How did she? Black tea?
Different flavors and stuff. And so I wondered if it was decaf because I'm like, she's probably just so exhausted from having 5 kids that nothing was going to keep her up. Nothing was going to keep her up. But that was sort of like her wind down ritual at night was a hot cup of tea.
Yeah. I often drink chamomile at night, but in the morning I drink black tea. And we both have tea today.
Tea.
We brewed our tea before because we're all about it. And I was also going to say that Spode dishes, which are still made in England, a lot of different patterns are. Many of the patterns relate to botanical themes. They also have a bunch of Asian themes because they were fascinated with Asia and China came out of Asia, blah, blah, blah. So now they aren't truly China. They're actually something much, much stronger, and they're hard to break. Like they don't chip and stuff like stoneware.
That is good. So you have a couple of your favorite teas that you want to tell us about.
So I love Fortnum and Mason teas. I love almost any kind of black tea, including Yorkshire Blend Gold. But my favorite teas are the Fortnum and Mason ones, and they're kind of pricey. I love the Jubilee Blend and the Royal Blend, and we're linking to that in our show notes so that if you're interested, you can buy them in tea bags or loose leaf. They're a lot cheaper in tea bags. I like loose leaf, so I actually spring for them once in a while. You can also buy them at Williams-Sonoma.
And I'm just a plain old girl. I like Earl Grey. It's got a touch of bergamot usually. And the one grocery store had a brand, Taylor of Harrogate. And I love that. Mm-hmm. And then they stopped selling it. And so I had to go back to just, plain Earl Grey. But I want that tea now that I'm thinking about it, how good it was.
Yeah, I didn't used to like Earl Grey until I hit middle age. And I don't know why that is, but now I love it and I drink it a lot. And Taylor of Harrogate, I've been there. I've been to Harrogate.
Wow.
That's where Yorkshire Blend, it's the same company that makes Yorkshire Blend Gold. And we stayed in Harrogate when we went with our friend Leonie. We went with her and a group to Yorkshire, and we stayed in the town of Harrogate, and we walked by Taylor's of Harrogate every day. And Bill and I were like, what? And there's this thing that they have called Betty's Tea Room, and all of the teas in there are specially for Betty's, but they're all Taylor of Harrogate tea.
I need to order some if the grocery store's not going to get it back in stock because they hooked me on it. It's not fair that they take it off the shelves after I got hooked on it. Not fair.
I think you can order it online. I think you can order it on Amazon.
I think I might. The other tea that I really love, and this goes back to when I was in like junior high, there was this place that had these little loose leaf teas, and I bought tea with rose petals in it, and now that's like a special treat. I don't want to drink it all the time. But that little essence of rose, I love that.
I love tea with rose petals, and we're linking to one that people can get from Republic of Tea, which is a great tea brand.
Yes.
And you can find it in gift shops. I don't know where it's made, but you can definitely find it. And there's some American tea companies too.
Right.
So if we can't grow the tea plant, I'm fighting with my cat. I'm not really fighting with him, so don't get mad at me, listeners, but I have to move him off my kitchen table. I can't stand him on there. Hot tea in the morning, are you a big fan?
Yes.
Me too.
When I left my corporate job to retire and do fun things like podcasts with you and write books, etc., they say, well, what are you going to miss? Are you going to miss us? I'm like, I'm not going to miss any of you people. I'm going to miss the hot water spigot that was connected to the coffee machine, and you could get instant hot water, the exact right temperature to make tea. And now I got electric tea kettle. I got to go. I got to heat it up. I got to wait. So I do miss that spigot.
You do? I had one of those spigots. When we remodeled our kitchen, I had one, but my water is so hard that it tore them up. I replaced it once, and then I decided that I could also use an electric tea kettle. We're gonna link to one of our favorite ones in the show notes. So if people want to buy one, these would all make really good gifts, guys, although you're listening to this on Christmas, so it might be a little late for that, but maybe you have a birthday coming up.
I do have a birthday coming up in January. But if you look under the tree and you're like, they didn't really get me what I want, I like Dee and Carol's suggestions. Some very nice, elegant teas, some spode china, an electric tea kettle. You're living the dream.
In my opinion, you are. You are living the dream. And I also drink out of a little Christmas tea set that my mom bought me 25 years ago when I couldn't afford it, which was very sweet of her. So since we can't grow to the tea shrub in Oklahoma, before we say that, we should say that what they harvest from the tea shrub are the little tiny leaves at the top of each stem and also the buds. And tea is expensive because it has to be hand-picked, as far as I know. It also has to go through certain processes. So white tea is only partially, it's dried. There's green tea that is dried green, then there's white tea, then there's black tea, and there's oolong tea, and there are mixtures of things. All of these take a lot of processes and take a lot of time to dry and fix, and so that's why it's so expensive. So since we aren't going to do that, we're not going to hand-pick tea leaves.
No, but we can grow. There is a native shrub that in the American Revolution, this shrub was what they used to get sort of tea from. I'll say sort of tea because it didn't have any caffeine, but it's sort of like a tea substitute because apparently all the tea came through England. And since we were at war with England, there was no way to get tea. So that is a shrub called New Jersey tea or Ceananthus americanus, a small shrub.
Americanus lets you know right away that it was found in the Americas.
Exactly.
And so it is. It's a little shrub. It likes partial sun in Oklahoma. I think it would like more sun and would bloom better in my garden if I put it in more sun, but then it would, get hurt by the sun. So I grow it in partial
And it has
sun.
tiny white flowers. And this is not a specimen shrub. This is one you would want to mix into a border maybe of other native shrubs because it is, I hate to say this about a plant, it is remarkably boring to me. I have it.
It is kind of boring. It doesn't do much, but we talked a couple of episodes ago about birds and feeding the birds and providing shelter. This is one of those great shrubs that provides shelter.
I don't think it even provides seed that the birds can eat.
No, it doesn't. It has blooms in spring, and it's kind of boring. You're right. But what would we do without boring shrubs to kind of fill things in so other plants can shine?
Right. And we are ready. If we can't get tea, we both have New Jersey tea.
Yes, we do. Bill and Claire and I went to Boston last summer, and we went on this tour about the Boston Tea Party. And in the tour, they told us that tea that they threw over the side when they dressed up as Native Americans and threw it over, which, by the way, no one thought they were Native Americans. They just stuck feathers in their hair. Nobody believed it. Everybody knew who it was. So anyway, when they threw that over the side, that was like $1 million worth of tea in today's dollars. No wonder England was a little upset.
I would be a lot upset.
Yeah, I would too, but that was a fun tour. So have we talked enough about tea, or could we rhapsodic about it more?
We could rhapsodic. We could do a whole podcast about tea, episode after episode after episode. But we are going to move on to veggies instead.
We are, and today our veggie is an herb. And so our quote is, "There's rosemary for you, that's for remembrance. Pray you love, remember." And that's William Shakespeare. It's Ophelia's famous speech in Hamlet when she's kind of going mad. It's one of the best things to read if you like botanical inferences. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful speech. And if you go read it, you can look up information on it. In fact, I wrote a whole article about meaning in flowers, and I used that speech as part of it.
Well, and somewhere around here, and I'll put a link to it, I have a whole book about like Shakespeare in the Garden, and it's a whole book about all the plants mentioned in Shakespeare. So,
oh, cool.
I will find that book and I will put a link to it.
Yeah, and if I can find, the information, I will also give you guys the link to my article that I did. Okay, so rosemary, pray, love, remember. How could you forget rosemary? It's wonderful stuff. But there's a new name in town. Dang it.
Rosemary used to be Rosemarianus officinalis. And they decided that rosemary is actually a salvia.
A salvia.
So now it's Salvia rosmarinus. Rosmarinus. I think that's right.
It's hard to say. Salvia rosmarinus instead of Rosmarinus officinalis. So once again, the taxonomists had nothing better to do, and they changed the name of a plant. I'm just kidding. I think this actually had to do with DNA research again.
It all has to do with DNA research.
Yeah, because see, plants used to be named botanically according to maybe the person who discovered them, quote unquote, or they were named according to what they looked like, or some other symbolic way. I mean, they had various ways of doing it, and they did it in Latin, sometimes Greek. And now they're finding out the DNA of plants is very similar, and sometimes plants that you don't think are anything like another plant are in that group, because I don't really think rosemary does not remind me of salvia, but I'll defer to the experts.
So are you very successful with growing rosemary, Dee?
I actually am very successful growing rosemary in the summer in raised beds, and it really, really likes those concrete lined raised beds of my potager, and I'll show a picture of it. It will last over winter for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years sometimes 3. And then eventually we'll get a really rainy winter, and that'll be the end of the rosemary because it likes it dry. So like salvia, it likes it dry.
So you leave your rosemary out all winter long?
Right, because it is hardy. It's hardy in zone 7A, which is where I am. But the problem that rosemary gets here is that the drainage isn't always good enough. And so it, like lavender, it grows in the same conditions as lavender.
Right. And here it is not winter hardy. So it's usually grown as a container plant, and then you want to get it inside, and inside then you watch it die, and then you get a new plant quickly in the spring. It just does, in my opinion, it is not a very successful house plant. And they sell a ton of them this time of year. They're, the different topiaries, and so
shaped like Christmas trees.
Yes.
Yeah, I see the Christmas tree ones all the time. And you know what? I bought one last year, and I actually kept it alive a long time, but I don't know how I did that. I mean, sometimes things just work out. But if you do decide to bring one of those home, put it in a terracotta pot instead of leaving it in the plastic, and water it real good, and then don't water it hardly at all, because it's a Mediterranean plant. It wants to be left alone. And it really doesn't like our air indoors either. It likes hot air, but it likes full sun. I mean, really, it's not a house plant.
No. And if you buy the rosemary this time of year where they're shaped like a Christmas tree or whatever, before you go snipping off those leaves to use in cooking, beware, because if it's grown for ornamental purposes, they may have used pesticides that you don't want to eat.
Yeah, they might have. And actually, they would probably stay in rosemary leaves for a long time because they're evergreen.
You can't really scrub it off.
No.
Don't buy it to make food out of.
I'm still clipping rosemary off my outdoor plants, because
and that's nice.
Even the outside of the plants, they've kind of gone dormant because it got really cold here a couple of nights. But it's a big plant. So the interior of the plant, you can still get little pieces of it. Same way with the sage, but that's all getting ready to come to an end because January and February will probably be cold. So that kind of brings us to our dirt, which is how to keep plants alive that you got as presents during the holiday season. And those you just throw away. You're allowed to throw away anything you want, listeners.
Yes. And so let's start with the queen of Christmas flowers, the poinsettia.
Yeah, I have one slowly dying right next to my fireplace right now. And that's okay.
Well, that's because it's right next to your fireplace.
Au contraire, my friend, because I have not lit a fire in my fireplace yet. So no, it's not the heat of the fireplace. It's just the fact that it's a poinsettia. You know how they are.
I do know how they are. They start dropping their leaves. They don't like a cold draft.
Nope.
They don't like the hot fireplace.
Nope.
They don't like their feet wet.
Nope.
And so when you water them, you got to take that foil liner that surely it came with. Take the foil liner off, water it, let it drain all the way through, and then if you want to put that back on just for decoration. And they will just slowly drop their leaves.
Yes.
and they're done.
And that foil liner is really nice about hiding the fact that they've dropped all their leaves down in the top of the potting soil. And you know what? Just don't worry about it. You can over summer them if you want to. I know people who keep them in their closet and then they put them outside in the summertime. And here's the thing, my garden is too full and I don't have time for that stuff. I just throw them away after I'm done with them. And I actually found mine at Costco, and it was a giant one, and it cost me like $17. So I don't feel bad.
You know what? I was at our Costco and I saw those. I bought the 4-pack for 17, and then the great big ones were like 13.
Well, maybe it was 13. I don't think they're any more expensive here than they are in Indiana, but maybe. I don't know. Sam's had them. Everybody had had poinsettias this year. Even Aldi's had really cute little white poinsettias. And I almost bought one, and then I didn't know where I'd put it, so I didn't buy it this year. I like pink ones. I like ones with splotches. And actually, we could link back to our episode last year where we talked extensively about poinsettias and gave our love of poinsettias its due.
There you go. So you have and you'll call them the non-stinky paper whites, because I have the stinky paper whites.
Yeah, I don't like Ziva, as we've talked before. So I gave a bunch of non-stinky paper whites to my friends. Here's the truth. I started way too many, and I ordered some, and then I ordered some again because of the podcast. This podcast doesn't make us money. It costs us money. But happily, I had gifts then. And so I gave a bunch of them away in milk glass. And antique milk glass is really easy to find where I live. I heard from some people it's not where they live, but nothing's prettier than paper whites and milk glass.
And so when those are all bloomed out, right to the compost pile.
Yeah, just throw them in there because in our climates, they don't overwinter. So like my friend Curtis Ann, who lives down in Alabama, Mobile, she can put them outside, but the rest of us cannot. So do not feel bad about these. Let them go. Think of that song in Frozen.
Yeah. Don't think about it too much, because then you'll have an earworm.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to do that to everybody.
Yeah, you'll learn. So 2 other plants very quickly, the Christmas cactus or Thanksgiving cactus. A house plant, you can definitely keep that for decades if you just don't overwater it.
Yeah, it doesn't like to be overwatered. Mine sit in my bathroom facing in a south window all summer. Like when they quit blooming, I put them back there. And when we say Christmas cactus, we're also talking about the Thanksgiving cactus and also all of the inter-hybridization that's been going on between all of the different ones. So there's hybrids now. And the thing is, they don't ask for anything. Somebody asked me yesterday, because I've been featuring these a lot on my Instagram, and they asked me if they have to be pot bound to bloom. There's all of these things that people say about them to make them bloom. No, they do not. According to our friend Matt Mattis, who's just written a book on flowers this time, he wrote a first book on vegetables. Now I think it's called Mastering the Flower Garden, the Art of Flower Gardening, or something like that. Anyway, it isn't out yet, but it's almost out. And he actually wrote on my page, and he said that it has to do with alkalinity, that they bloom better if they're in alkaline soil. And I got to think about that, and I didn't get to talk to him about it further, but I should. He said he had done a bunch of research on this. I think it's my alkaline water. I have very alkaline soil outside. I have highly alkaline water that's kind of hard, and I just use regular cactus potting soil or gritty potting soil, but I bet it's my water that makes mine bloom so well. How do yours bloom?
Mine bloomed just perfectly fine, and my water would tend towards alkaline versus acidic. The thing about the Christmas cactus is it just starts forming buds when the days shorten and you don't have to do much but kind of put it in a window and wait.
So that's what we say, but I'm telling you, people wrote me extensive stuff about the Christmas cactus, that they could only get them to bloom on one side. Well, I guess you're not turning them in the window. I mean, they need sun all over, but mine are in a south-facing window until I bring them out to bloom, and then they're in a west window. So I think mine get a lot of sunlight all over their leaves.
That could be, but I haven't had problems.
Me neither. Mine bloom like crazy. I felt kind of bad. I didn't know people had trouble with Christmas cactus. So write and tell us, everybody. Tell us about your experiences with Christmas cacti or Christmas cactuses. And And we're just calling all of that genus Christmas cactuses as a common name.
Right. So the last plant we're going to talk about is amaryllis. And to me, amaryllis isn't...
But not least.
Not least.
Yes.
Amaryllises are wonderful. And so amaryllis is a either or. Some people don't want to try to get them to rebloom the next year, so they just toss them. If you get a waxed amaryllis, you just want to toss it because it's not going to grow. Although
Right.
And then, or you can keep it on as a house plant and let it grow. And then next year in the fall, kind of let it go dormant and then it'll probably bloom for you again. So it's an either or.
Yeah, it's just whatever you want to do. And the USDA has some really good instructions about getting them to rebloom. It's not that hard, but it all has to do with timing. And you have to put them in a closet and not forget they're in the closet. I have made them rebloom, and sometimes I just let them go because then I just buy more next year. They aren't very expensive anymore.
Well, they aren't, most of them aren't very expensive, but if you buy some of the, I guess, more exotic varieties,
the cybisters,
you can spend some money.
Yeah.
You can spend some money, and those I think you want to keep around and get those to rebloom.
I've done it both ways. If I am going to make them rebloom, I take them outside because they are a tropical plant, most of them. And so I take them outside, put them next to my potager. They get half a day of shade. The rest of the time they're in the sun. It's hot. They like it. And then I just water them with my other group of plants that are out there. And I don't know. They do like to be a little bit pot bound, though, the amaryllis.
So, Dee.
Yes?
I'm going to be on TV on Saturday talking about Christmas plant care in Indianapolis.
Will they have a clip after you do it?
They'll probably have some clips on YouTube, and we'll try to find those. But if listeners are in the Indianapolis area, I'll be on WISH TV, Channel 8, at 10 o'clock on Great Day TV, talking about Christmas plant care.
Great. That's fun. I'm going to speak at the Oklahoma Home and Garden Show in January. I think it's January 17th through the 19th, and I should have a schedule out soon, and I will share it with everybody. So,
excellent. We
are so excited that we got to be with you on Christmas Day. I hope your Christmases were merry and yet peaceful, and I just thought I hope your celebrations were fun. I hope yours are too, Carol.
Thank you, Dee. Back at you. And I'll put all the links to social media on our show notes, so we're not going to go through all that. It's Christmas.
It's Christmas after all. Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you for chatting with us over the garden gate.
Bye.
Bye.